Emily Dawson, 33, and until last Christmas I believed my family was unshakable. Then my phone lit up with a voicemail from my dad. Christmas is off. Expect a call from our lawyer. 6 years earlier, I had co-signed their $450,000 0-cents mortgage after they were denied a refinance. They said it was just a formality, just to help them hold on to the family home. That night, I didn't argue. I just texted back, "Understood." Then I quietly started the process of removing my name from their mortgage. What followed was 48 hours of dead silence, then a storm. 68 missed calls, frantic texts, and their lawyer leaving voicemails practically pleading for answers. Let me tell you something. Family drama during the holidays hits different. So grab your hot chocolate and let me know in the comments if you've ever had a Christmas meltdown that flipped your world upside down. If you're new here, I'd love to know where you're watching from. And don't forget to hit subscribe to join our growing community of survivors and boundary setters. Because sometimes, the gift you need most is the courage to finally say enough. I grew up in Aspen Ridge, a neighborhood often referred to as the fancy part of Boulder. Winding cobblestone streets, trees trimmed with magazine perfection, and every Christmas lit up with thousands of twinkling lights draped over balconies, flagpoles, and the pine trees out front. Our house was one of the biggest on the block, 2.5 stories, dark European-style tiled roof, a broad front porch, and always the smell of cookies wafting from my mother's oven. As a child, I truly believed our family was one of the most perfect in the world. My father, Frank Dawson, used to be someone people admired. He was the founder of a cybersecurity software company once dubbed the Apple of the Rockies. His shirt collars were always a bit rumpled, his grin wide, and his manner of speaking made people feel like he knew exactly what he was doing. Throughout my childhood, I thought my dad was someone who couldn't fail, till his company collapsed after a disastrous investment deal. I still remember the day he shattered his coffee mug in the kitchen while reading the news on his iPad, a cold, clipped financial headline announcing that his company had just been acquired for virtually nothing. From then on, he never really went back to work. Once, my mother said, "Your father is just taking a break, not unemployed." But the reality was, he began spending hours every day glued to financial news channels, dreaming of a comeback that never came. My mother, Carol, used to be a high school teacher, a gentle woman who always answered the phone with, "Yes, ma'am," always brewed peppermint tea for the neighbors whenever winter arrived. But she was also the kind of person who could make you feel suffocatingly guilty with just one glance and a whisper as light as the breeze. "I just don't understand why you feel so distant." She loved our family with a near religious devotion, but in a way that meant everything had to revolve around her husband, the youngest son, and the illusion that our home was still whole. I'm the eldest daughter, the one who did everything by the book. I earned a scholarship to UT Austin, graduated with a degree in communications, managed to stay in the city on a barely livable starting salary, and after a few years, worked my way up to become a strategy lead at a major marketing firm. To the extended family, I was not sure I was anything more than a walking bank account. Zach, my younger brother, was nothing like me. He dropped out of college halfway through, dabbled as a part-time DJ, then switched to tech delivery gigs, only to eventually move back in with our parents. Whenever I called to check in, he'd give me one-word answers like, "Fine," then immediately ask, "You still working at that company? Must be raking it in, huh?" He never asked me for money outright, but always carried an attitude like I owed him something because I'd made it and he hadn't, and because I was the only one not clinging to the shell of family just to get by. I used to do everything I could to keep things normal. I kept visiting home, chipped in to fix the roof, smiled through every family Christmas dinner, brought gifts for my brother without ever asking why he forgot mine year after year, tried to believe this was still my family, until the glossy paint on that picture-perfect family started to peel. Things didn't fall apart overnight. It was more like a crack in glass, so small you couldn't see it at first. But with every shift in weather, every bit of pressure, it spread a little more, until it couldn't be repaired at first. It was just small things. Mom would call, her voice soft, almost embarrassed. "Your brother needs to buy new textbooks for the semester. Dad and I are a bit tight this month. Could you spot us for now?" I never hesitated. When I was little, Mom used to make apple-stuffed pancakes every Sunday morning just because I liked them. I remember Dad standing out in the yard for hours, teaching me to ride a bike until my knees bled. Helping them? That was easy. Then came the roof repairs after the storm, the overdue property taxes, the hospital bills after Dad's warning chest pain. Each time, they said it was temporary. Each time, I believed them. But then I started noticing that these financial emergencies always oddly coincided with my year-end bonuses, salary raises, or the moment I'd post some good news about work on LinkedIn. When I bought my first apartment in Austin, not fancy, but a milestone for me, my mother called less than a week later asking to borrow $4,000, 0 cents for a sudden issue with the bank. My father chimed in with a half-joking comment, "Now that our daughter's made it, it's only right to share a little of that luck with the family, isn't it? Share the luck." Another way of saying silent obligation. I started feeling uneasy, but I was still me, the educated, composed, responsible eldest daughter, so instead of refusing, I rationalized it. That they raised me, that I was more fortunate than they were, that a few $1,000s was nothing compared to family. And then came the day I will never forget. The day they asked me to meet them at the bank. "We need you to co-sign the refinancing on the house," they said. I remember the atmosphere in that tiny conference room so clearly. A young banker with a polite smile, a thick stack of documents, and my father saying a line I'll never forget. "You don't have to worry. It's just a formality. We make our payments on time. You just need to sign." And I did. Because he was my father. Because my mother gripped my hand outside the bank, her eyes glassy. "You just saved your parents' home. Our family will be forever grateful." But from that moment on, I was legally tied to a $450,000 0 cents debt. For a property I didn't live in, didn't use, and had absolutely no control over. Still, I tried to carry on as if nothing had changed. I poured myself into work and began dating Ethan, the first man in my life who made me feel like I didn't have to overachieve just to be enough. But the more independent and successful I became, the more persistent and bolder. Their requests for help grew. Dad called to say, "There's a new golf club opening up. I want to join. It's good for networking. Who knows, maybe it'll lead to a comeback." I almost laughed, thinking he was joking. But he wasn't. He was dead serious. Then Mom announced, "You know, your father just decided to renovate the kitchen. It's so outdated, and since your name is on the mortgage, we should all pitch in, right?" Our feelings. I began to feel like I was living in a play where I was no longer the main character, just the sponsor. And whenever I declined, or even asked something as simple as, "Why now?" I didn't get answers. I got cold silences, pointed remarks. "We really raised you to be someone who only thinks with her head. You used to say, when you were little, that you'd always take care of us. What happened to that?" Zach, my brother who never moved out, became their unofficial spokesperson. "You're not grateful enough. Mom and Dad sacrificed everything for us." I asked him, "What do you think about the fact that I'm co-signed on a nearly $500,000 loan that's being used to remodel the kitchen while you live there rent-free?" He paused, then replied, "Don't tear this family apart over a few numbers." A few numbers. That's when it began to sink in. For them, I wasn't Emily anymore. I was Emily with the good salary, the solo homeowner, no husband or kids, so her money must be just sitting there. I was a talking ATM programmed to say yes. And that ATM was starting to leak, and on the verge of blowing up. I still remember the feeling, that first time I lit the Christmas tree in my own home in Austin. I had chosen every single ornament, every string of lights, every glass bauble shaped like the golden star I used to love as a child. I had personally printed everyone's name onto the stockings hanging from the mantel. Mom, Dad, Zach, and even one for Zach's new girlfriend, even though I'd never met her. I had prepared Mom's favorite dessert, strawberry cheesecake tart. Ethan helped me set up a new dining table on the balcony, strung soft golden lights along the railing, and quietly rested his hand on my shoulder when I whispered, "It finally feels like this might be my Chris." Truly believed it, that everything was going to be okay, that if I just tried hard enough, I could piece everything back together, make it right, and keep my family whole. Until the call from my mother, 3 weeks before Christmas. Her voice was light, almost breezy. "Oh, your father and I will be a bit late on Christmas Eve, okay? We need to swing by the travel agency to finalize our booking." I froze. "Booking?" She laughed, like she was talking about getting theater tickets. "Yeah, the Caribbean cruise in February. 35 years of marriage. We thought we'd celebrate a little, don't you think?" I smiled, mechanically. But inside, my thoughts were spinning. Just 2 months ago, they had called me in tears because they couldn't pay the property taxes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went online and searched the name of the cruise line she'd casually mentioned. The cheapest package, $3,200, 0 cents per person, not including airfare, service fees, or onboard expenses. The next morning, I drove 3 hours back to Boulder. I didn't plan to start a fight, just to talk. But when I walked into the living room, I froze. A brand new 70-inch TV had just been mounted on the wall. My father, clearly proud of his trophy, grinned as he clicked the remote. "The kids are going to lose their minds over this screen. The HDR is insane." In the kitchen, I saw bags from Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, Macy's. On the couch were silk maxi dresses, designer flat sandals, and Italian sunglasses. "These are for the cruise?" I asked. My mother nodded softly, still smiling. "Bought them early to save money. The sales are really good right now." Stood there in the middle of the house with my name on the mortgage, the house they once claimed was on the brink of being lost because of financial hardship. Took a deep breath. "I just want to ask, if you can buy a brand new TV, book a cruise, shop for designer clothes, then why did you need me to pay the property taxes, or fix the roof over the summer? And by the way, my name is still on that home loan." The room suddenly fell silent. The Rumney set the remote down. His face tightened. "You're keeping score with your parents now?" I hadn't even answered before he went on, his voice rising with each word. "After everything we've done for you, raising you, paying for your education, helping you with your career, and now, just because of some money, you dare to stand here and accuse us?" My mother placed a hand over her chest, her eyes instantly misting up. "I didn't realize we had to get your approval for how we spend, Emily." I tried to explain. I wasn't controlling anything, I was just worried. But the air had already cracked. My father shook his head, got up, and looked at me like I was a stranger. "Truly disappointing. You've lived out there so long, seems like you forgot where you came from." I didn't say anything else. I couldn't. I drove back to Austin that night. No music, no stops. When I got home, I stood in the dark living room, staring at the lit Christmas tree. Beside me, Ethan said nothing, just handed me a mug of hot water. I whispered, "Everything I've built feels like I'm the only one standing in it." 2 days later, I got a voicemail from my father. I was wrapping gifts when his name appeared on my screen. I hit play, set it to speaker. His voice rang out, measured, cold, sharp as a blade. "Emily, your mother and I have talked. Christmas this year is canceled, at least, for you. We need space, and I suggest you prepare for a call from our attorney. Since you're so concerned about finances, we'll handle everything the way you seem to prefer, legally. Don't call back." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply set the phone down and sent one reply. "Understood." Then I opened my laptop, and I began doing what I should have done long ago, disentangling my name from every financial tie to them. I don't know how long I sat on the living room floor, surrounded by wrapping paper and stockings with names of people who, now, wouldn't be receiving them. Ethan looked at me like that, leaning back against the sofa, eyes wide but empty. He didn't say a word, just sat down beside me and took my hand. When I handed him my phone to replay my father's voicemail, I didn't cry, but I could see his chest rising and falling, like he was trying to contain the rage I no longer had the strength to feel. "I'm not surprised," I whispered, my voice nearly gone. "It just hurts so much." He pulled me into his arms and said gently, "You didn't do anything wrong, Emily. I've watched this cycle repeat for the last 3 years. They ask for money, you help. Then you find out they spend it recklessly. You're hurt, they're angry. Repeat. Forever. If you don't break this cycle now, then when—" That question cut straight through me. I didn't sleep that night. I opened every bank account, every old statement, Email, message, spreadsheet. I retraced every dollar I'd sent them over the past 6 years. There were numbers I once thought of as no big deal, but when totaled, I could barely believe what I saw. Over $70,000. No contracts, no repayment, no real thank you. Just more asks, more expectations, more responsibility. All that data and brought it to Kelly Morgan, a financial advisor in downtown Austin. She sat in silence as I told my story without judgment. When I finally asked, "Do you think I'm overreacting?" Kelly said just one sentence. "No. You're reacting. Right. After 6 years of reacting wrong." I didn't want to argue, apologize, or explain anything to my parents anymore. I wanted freedom, and to be free, I had to remove my name from the mortgage on the Boulder house. Kelly connected me with Diane Tran, an attorney who specialized in personal property and co-signed loan obligations. Diane listened carefully, then confirmed. If I didn't live in the house, didn't benefit from it, and had evidence of manipulation or harm, I had every right to request removal, even without the other party's consent. The catch was that it had to be done quickly, quietly, without alerting them. Because I knew all too well how a single message from my mother, a teary look, a whispered, "How could you think so badly of your own family?" could be enough to make me falter. 48 hours after that voicemail, my phone started to explode. A text from Mom, "Sweetheart, what's going on? The bank called." A missed call from Dad. Then another, from their attorney, a man named Greg Stanton, who left a message. "Miss Dawson, I hope we can discuss this before things escalate any further." But I didn't pick up. I silenced my phone. I switched it to airplane mode. I made myself a cup of tea and placed the phone in the kitchen drawer, as if it were a bomb that might go off the moment I touched it. I told Ethan, "For the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself." 3 days later, I sat in a quiet, glass-walled room across from a bank representative, a woman named Vanessa Carr, whose eyes were gentle but professional, as if she'd seen countless people just like me sitting in that very chair. I handed her the full dossier, bank statements, spreadsheets of money transfers, screenshots of the lavish purchases my parents had flaunted online, right after calling me for emergency help. Along with that, I included the voicemail recording from my father, the one where he cut me off, threatened legal action, and blamed me for destroying the family. Vanessa quietly flipped through every page, reading carefully. At the end, she looked up and said seriously, "This story isn't rare, but you're one of the few brave enough to put an end to it." I nearly held my breath when she added, "We do have a process for removing a co-signaler from a loan in cases where there's evidence of harm, manipulation, or financial risk. Based on this documentation, I'm marking it as urgent and forwarding it to the approval board." I signed the forms, my hand slightly trembling, not from fear, but because for the first time, I was reclaiming authority over my own life. On the drive home, I didn't play any music. I needed to hear the rhythm of my own heartbeat, each beat whispering, "You chose, and this time, you're not going back." Ethan was waiting for me with a pot of hot soup and eyes softer than any words could ever be. When I set my bag down and said, "It's done. The paperwork is in process," he simply nodded, then asked, "So what now?" Without hesitation, I replied, "I need to send them an email. One last time, clear. No gray areas." That night I sat down to write. It took nearly 3 hours, but every word was deliberate, firm, and without ambiguity. Dear Mom and Dad, as of today, I am officially no longer a co-signer on the mortgage for the Boulder house. This has been processed legally and in full accordance with proper regulations. I'm not doing this out of anger, but because I can no longer remain tied to responsibilities that are unfair and one-sided. Over the past 6 years, I have transferred over $70,000, 0 cents in support. I never asked for repayment. I never demanded proof or justification. But I've come to recognize that this relationship no longer resembles family. It has become exploitation. I still hope that we can preserve a connection, but if that's to happen, it will need to be rebuilt from the ground up, with 3 clear conditions. First, no further financial requests of any kind from either of you. Second, an acknowledgement of the emotional and financial manipulation that has taken place. Third, a willingness for the entire family to participate in therapy with a neutral mediator. I will be cutting off contact for 30 days to give everyone time to reflect. After January 27, if you're willing to have a conversation built on respect and transparency, I'll be open to it. Any attempts to pressure, guilt, or deflect will only extend my absence from this family's life. Your daughter, Emily. After hitting send, I shut down my laptop, silenced my phone, closed every chat window, and placed the device into a drawer. Ethan and I packed light, and the next morning we drove out of Austin toward his sister's home in San Antonio, a place where no one from my family could come knocking in the middle of the night. 30 days. No ringing phone, no guilt-tripping texts, no one telling me I was making things hard for the family. Just me, the sound of my own breath, and the steady ticking of the clock. The first day, I felt empty. By day 3, I felt restless, but by day 7, when I opened my eyes and didn't see my parents' names and any notifications on my screen, I knew something inside me was beginning to heal. I spent nearly my entire life trying to please someone, and now, I was learning how to make peace with myself. The second week of my 30 days of silence passed with a quiet, cautious stillness. I began to breathe more deeply, eat more steadily. Each morning, waking up at Ethan's sister's house, I no longer checked my phone as if it were a survival reflex. I started journaling, not to explain, but to understand myself. Until one morning, while I was making coffee in the kitchen, Ethan walked in with a look that was half serious, half warning. They've started. I looked up. Who? He placed his phone on the table and opened a message forwarded from an unknown number. Zach posted a public status on Facebook. In the screenshot was a long paragraph, starting with the line, "Sometimes people forget blood ties over a few digits in a bank account." Below were dozens of comments from friends and relatives, most of whom had no idea what was really going on but felt compelled to take a side. Maybe her boyfriend talked her into this. Carol went through so much raising her, and now the daughter turns her back like this. I stared at the screen. Not one line mentioned the truth, that I had quietly paid off nearly all of my family's debts over the past 6 years. No one asked why I had gone silent. Zach messaged me 2 days later. "Mom cried all night. Dad drank until 2 a.m., all because of you. You're tearing this family apart over a few $1,000s. Are you even human?" I didn't reply, but I wrote his words down in my journal. You're tearing this family apart over a few $1,000s. It wasn't a few thousand. It was over 70,000. It was a house I didn't live in but was legally tied to. It was countless sleepless nights haunted by nameless guilt. 3 days later, I received a text from my mother. No greeting, no question marks, just a message that read like a broken poem, scattered with ellipses. I missed the old Emily. The one who hugged me from behind whenever I was sad. The one who never cared about money. I just want that little girl back, I laughed. Not from joy, from recognition. This was the old play, my mother's way of drawing me back in. Not with scolding, not with anger, but by invoking the image of the good daughter she'd painted in her mind. A mold of obedience, sacrifice, and self-erasure. Someone who always put others' feelings before her own. But I wasn't that girl anymore. That night I read all the messages to Ethan. I asked him, "Am I being too harsh?" He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "You're not being harsh, you're being honest. What hurts them isn't that you're cruel, it's that, for the first time, you're not following the script." We sat in silence for a while. Then Ethan opened his laptop and found an email address for Aunt Helen, my mother's younger sister. Someone I had always liked but never really been close to. I don't know why, but I wrote to her, a short message, telling her that I was being blamed by the entire family for stepping back from a toxic financial relationship. I didn't expect a reply. I just needed to speak to someone outside the circle of damage. 3 days later, she wrote back, "Emily, I know more than you think. Your parents have relied on you for far too long. What they call family closeness is really a model of dependency, and you're finally strong enough to break it. I'm proud of you. No matter what anyone says, don't go back to that cycle. Everyone's grown now. It's time each of us lives with the choices we make. I read that message over and over, like a cloak wrapped around me in winter. For the first time that month, I felt warm, not because I'd been forgiven, but because someone finally saw me. I chose the Willow and Pine Cafe in downtown Austin, a quiet, airy place with big windows overlooking the street and a handwritten menu that changed daily. Most importantly, it wasn't too private to allow yelling, but secluded enough that no one would feel completely exposed. Sent the location, the time, and one condition. Ethan will be joining me. Dad responded almost immediately, curt. Family talks happen at home. Don't bring outsiders into this. I replied with exactly one line. If you're not at Willow and Pine by 10:30 a.m. Saturday, I understand that you're refusing to have a conversation. Saturday morning they showed up. Right on time. Not early, not late. Dad wore a white dress shirt and a brown tie. Mom carried a small bag of cookies, probably an attempt to set a casual and familial tone. They chose a corner table, private but close enough to others to ensure the conversation stayed civil. Ethan pulled out my chair, his hand resting gently on the small of my back, an unspoken signal. I'm right here. No one said a word for the first 10 seconds. We just looked at one another. 4 people, 1 small table, and a decade of layered hurt between us. Dad finally spoke first. His voice was low, measured. You've put us in a very difficult position. The bank has reached out. If we can't find a new co-signer within 60 days, we'll have to restructure the loan. The interest rate increase alone is nearly $700, 0 cents a month. I nodded, unmoved, then replied calmly, That's no longer my concern. He paused, a flicker of disbelief and anger flashing in his eyes. Mom jumped in right away. Emily, I don't understand what's happened to you. You're not the warm, loving daughter you used to be. I quietly reached into my bag and placed an envelope on the table. Inside is a printed record of all transfers, messages, and payment receipts over the last 6 years. Over $72,000, 0 cents. No repayment, no explanation, and never once a real thank you. They didn't touch the documents. I went on, eyes locked on theirs. Every time I got promoted, there was a new emergency at home, a roof leak, a hospital visit, overdue taxes. But then I'd see cruise photos, a brand new 70-inch TV, Gucci sunglasses. Dad's face flushed, but before he could push back, I asked directly, You told Mom the cruise came from a year-end bonus, didn't you? Mom turned to look at him, her brow furrowed. That's what you said. That's what I thought. I placed a printed transaction slip on the table. October 14th, $12,000, 0 cents, transferred from my account to yours. Note, hospital bill after cardiac checkup. That same month, you both posted check-in photos from the Miami port. The caption read, Our 35th anniversary adventure begins. The silence was so dense, I could hear the spoon stirring coffee at the table next to us. My mother froze, staring at my father. Robert, you used her money for the cruise. Dad didn't answer. His eyes avoided hers, avoided mine, avoided Ethan's, as if he wanted to disappear into the wall behind him. Mom set the bag of cookies down, her hand shaking. Her voice had lost all sweetness. It was thin, but sharp and steady. I didn't know. You always said you had it under control, and I believed you. I turned to her. I don't blame you for believing. I just can't live in a system where one person's trust is another person's tool of manipulation. Dad finally spoke, his voice hoarse. So what do you want? You want us to apologize, to get on our knees? I took a deep breath. No, I just want a relationship without money in the middle. No lies, no guilt dressed as love, no emotional blackmail wrapped in family loyalty. I pulled out another piece of paper, an extra copy of the email I'd sent 3 weeks ago outlining the 3 conditions. No more asking for money, acknowledgement of past manipulation, willingness to attend family therapy. Do you agree to these 3 things, we can rebuild. If not, at least we'll both know where we stand. Mom began to cry, but she didn't argue, she didn't plead. She just looked, truly sad. Dad stared at me for a long time, and in his eyes there was no more anger. No more threat. Just a kind of disoriented defeat, as if he'd finally realized the game was over, and we didn't hug when we left the cafe. We didn't promise to call soon, but I had said everything I needed to say, not to wound them, but to free myself. After that meeting at Willow and Pine, I didn't expect a miracle. I didn't think they would change after just one conversation, but I knew that in the heavy silence we left behind at that table, something had broken, and something else had just begun. 2 days later, Zach called. No yelling, no accusations, just a voice quieter, slower than usual. Mom's like a ghost. And Dad, he just locks himself in his room all day. They don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I sighed. You don't have to do anything, Zach. Just understand that I didn't disappear. I just stopped accepting how things used to be. There was a pause. Then my brother admitted, I think I get it now. I found some papers in Dad's drawer. They owe almost $90,000, 0 cents in credit card debt. I never knew. It was the first time he spoke to me like an adult, not the younger sibling shielded from the truth, but someone facing it alongside me. The following week, I received an email from Mom, not to apologize, not to explain, just this. I read everything you gave us. I see now that I've closed my eyes for too long. If you're willing, I want to start again with a family counseling session. I'll go, even if your father. That was all I needed. We began therapy with Dr. Lin Chen, a specialist in financial trauma and family dysfunction. Dad didn't come to the first session, but Mom did, and she cried, really cried. Not the kind meant to soften someone, but the kind that comes when you finally see all you've ignored. At the second session, Zach joined us. He barely spoke, until Drukshan asked, How do you feel watching your sister be treated this way? Zach whispered, Sometimes I was jealous, because she had freedom. But now I feel ashamed, because I thought she was being selfish. At the third session, Dad showed up. He didn't say much, no apologies, but he sat through the entire session, didn't leave the room. And when I brought up the cruise money for the first time, he didn't deny it. I know I was wrong, my father said, his voice dry, brittle. I just don't know how to live without control. Dr. Chen nodded gently. Then now is the time to learn. In April, my parents sold the house in Boulder. They had no other choice. They moved into a smaller apartment on the outskirts of Longmont, not far from the city. Not glamorous, but enough to live. I didn't offer financial help, but I helped them move. We found old cardboard boxes filled with photos and childhood crafts I'd made, scribbled birthday cards, snapshots from my high school graduation. Mom held a photo of 5-year-old me, grinning in the snow-covered yard, and whispered, You were always a little girl trying to make everyone happy. I wish I had asked if you were happy too. I didn't answer. I just gave her hand a gentle squeeze. And we both understood. No words needed. In June, I hosted a small gathering at my home. For the first time in years, my family sat around a table without mentioning money, debt, or expectation. We ate orange cake made by my mom, the one I used to hate as a kid, but now found oddly delicious. Dad told a short story about dropping his phone in a golf course pond, and when no one laughed, he cracked up himself, like he was finally learning to live with his imperfections. Zach brought his girlfriend, Olivia, a quiet woman who made him speak in a gentle tone I'd never heard from him before. Ethan, as always, stood behind me, not saying much, but his eyes told me everything. You did it. I can't say everything is fixed. Dad still has walls he hasn't taken down. Mom still occasionally slips into lines like, You never used to draw such hard boundaries. But I don't react sharply anymore, because now I understand. I don't have to fight for a place in my own family. I just have to build my boundaries and keep them calmly. I'm writing these words at the end of September as autumn taps against my window. The leaves are beginning to change, not because someone told them to, but because that's what they do. And I think people are like that too. Sometimes, to truly love your family, you have to break the way it's always worked. You have to be willing to get lost for a while, just to find yourself again, the right way. It took me 6 years to realize our family isn't about enduring. Love is an unconditional sacrifice. And being a good daughter doesn't mean being a smiling ATM. If you've ever been in my shoes, if you've ever felt guilty for setting boundaries, ever been called cold just for saying no, I want you to know, you are not wrong. A real family doesn't keep you in lifelong debt. A real family is where you can breathe, be yourself, and choose how to love without trading away your peace to do it. Thank you for walking with me to the end of this story. If you're in the middle of the chaos, trust me, you can step out, and you will be stronger for it.